Hi everyone. Emily and Jack seemed to have the ideal life. Jack was the kind of husband everyone admired, hard-working, kind, and utterly devoted to his wife. They were a power couple, a pair who balanced each other perfectly in every way. From leisurely weekend brunches to cozy movie nights, Jack adored Emily and made sure everyone around him knew it. They had been married for 5 years, and he still looked at her with the same sparkle in his eyes as he had on their wedding day. Jack believed he knew Emily inside and out, convinced they were soulmates in every sense of the word. But as time went on, small things began to feel off. Emily, who once eagerly shared every detail of her day, grew more reserved. She laughed less, avoided Jack's gaze at times, and always seemed preoccupied, even when they were alone together. Jack brushed off the changes, attributing them to stress from her new job, a demanding marketing role that required long hours and frequent travel. Still, a quiet, persistent unease settled in his chest, a feeling he couldn't shake. The first sign came one Friday night. Emily was heading out with her friends for a girls' night, and Jack encouraged her to enjoy herself. But as the night dragged on and her texts slowed to a trickle, his gut began to churn. When she finally stumbled in late, smelling faintly of cologne and looking more disheveled than expected after a girls' night out, Jack's suspicions grew. He pushed them down, not wanting to be the kind of husband who questioned his wife's every move. After all, Emily had never given him a reason to doubt her, until now. 2 weeks later, the second sign appeared. Jack was helping Emily with laundry when her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number popped up on her screen. "Last night was unforgettable. When can we do it again?" Jack's heart sank. He set down the laundry and took a deep breath. Emily noticed his expression and quickly swiped the message away, forcing a smile. "Work stuff," she said quickly. "Just a joke from a client." Jack forced a smile in return, but doubt was creeping into his mind. The words from that message echoed in his head, leaving an uncomfortable knot in his stomach. He began to change, becoming more withdrawn as he watched Emily closely, painfully aware of every small behavior he had once found endearing. It wasn't long before Jack's worst fears were confirmed. One rainy Saturday night, Emily told him she'd be working late again. Jack kissed her goodbye, but as he watched her drive away, he couldn't ignore the suffocating weight of doubt in his chest. On impulse, he got into his own car and followed her, keeping his distance and turning off his headlights. He watched as Emily pulled into a small, dimly lit bar on the other side of town. A man tall, with dark hair and a wide grin, was waiting by the door. Emily stepped out of her car, laughing as she wrapped her arms around him. Jack's heart shattered. As we dive deeper into this story, I'd love for you to join our storytelling family here at Lost Love Mysteries. If you're captivated so far, why not take a moment to hit that subscribe button? Every new story gives you a front row seat to unforgettable tales. Journeys, ones that might echo your own experiences, are often the most compelling. Let's continue and see how this story unfolds. They went inside, and Jack drove home, the image of what he'd witnessed seared into his mind. His vision blurred with a mix of anger and betrayal. He stumbled into his empty house, overwhelmed by a storm of emotions yet feeling strangely numb. He poured himself a drink, then another, each sip dulling the pain just enough to let him think clearly. Jack realized there was no saving this marriage. The woman he loved was gone, replaced by someone he no longer recognized. But instead of lashing out, he chose a different path, one that would make Emily feel the sting of betrayal as deeply as he had. Over the next week, Jack meticulously prepared, crafting a plan to ensure Emily's actions would come back to haunt her. Quietly, he emptied their shared bank accounts, transferring the funds to an account she couldn't access. He began packing his belongings, little by little, taking only what he needed and leaving no trace of his presence behind. He arranged to work remotely, coordinating with his boss to avoid drawing attention. Jack wanted to disappear before Emily even realized what was happening, leaving her with nothing but empty rooms and the crushing weight of her choices. The night before his departure, Jack booked a suite at a nearby hotel, ensuring Emily wouldn't know his whereabouts. He anticipated she'd likely spend the night with her mystery man, which played perfectly into his plan. While Emily was out, Jack executed his final steps. He left a single note on the kitchen counter, a simple farewell with no explanations or apologies. Just 3 words, "I know everything." He made one last sweep through the house, leaving behind the remnants of the life they'd built together. By the time he closed the door behind him, the house was nearly empty, a hollow shell that mirrored the emptiness in his heart. At the hotel, Jack waited. He poured a glass of whiskey, watching the clock tick as he imagined Emily's reaction when she returned home. He could almost picture her face, the confusion turning to panic as she found the note, the empty house, and the absence of everything familiar. He hoped she'd feel even a fraction of the pain she had caused him. Emily stumbled into the house at dawn, the faint scent of someone else's cologne still clinging to her clothes. She called out for Jack, expecting him to be asleep in bed, but the silence that greeted her was unsettling. She flicked on the lights, her gaze landing on the note on the kitchen counter. Panic set in as she moved from room to room, her eyes widening as she realized he was truly gone. She opened closets to find them half empty, drawers barely containing any of his belongings. Even their wedding photos were gone. Every trace of him had been meticulously erased. Emily's heart raced as she reached for her phone, dialing his number. Her calls went straight to voicemail, and she left frantic messages, her voice breaking as she begged him to come back. But Jack didn't answer. He was already long gone. In the weeks that followed, Emily tried everything to reach him. She called friends and family, even showing up at his workplace, only to learn he'd taken a remote assignment. Her calls and texts went unanswered, each one chipping away at her composure until she was left with nothing but regret and heartbreak. Her new relationship with her mystery man quickly soured, the initial excitement fading under the cold light of reality. She was left alone, forced to confront the consequences of her choices. Meanwhile, Jack started fresh. He rebuilt his life in a new city, surrounded by new friends, far from the memories of his failed marriage. He found peace in knowing he'd taken control of his own story, refusing to let betrayal define him. When Jack looked back on it all, he felt no bitterness, only a quiet sense of satisfaction. He'd given her what she wanted, freedom. But in the end, she'd only trapped herself in her own loneliness and regret.